Today we're going to talk about a woman whose life spanned 110 years. I mean, think about that, from the fall of an empire all the way to the digital age. But here's the thing, she didn't just witness history, she unearthed it, giving a voice back to a civilization that had been silent for thousands of years. Her name was Muazzez İlmiye Çığ. But maybe the most unbelievable part of her entire story, her entire life, is what happened when she was 92. Yeah, at an age when most people are long retired, this world-renowned historian suddenly found herself on the wrong side of the law. You heard that right. After dedicating her entire life to academic discovery, Muazzez İlmiye Çığ was put on trial. She was forced to stand in a modern courtroom and defend her life's work. So, this begs the question, right? How on earth does a career spent poring over 4,000-year-old clay tablets lead to a criminal prosecution? What could she possibly have discovered that was considered so dangerous? Well, the answer doesn't actually begin in ancient Sumer. To understand the trial, we have to go back to the chaotic birth of modern Turkey. I mean, talk about being born into chaos. The Ottoman Empire was literally crumbling around her. Her childhood was shaped by World War I and then the Turkish War of Independence. She was a child of conflict who grew up right alongside a brand new nation. And for her, this wasn't some abstract history lesson. This was real life. She remembered the extreme poverty firsthand. She once said, "There was barely bulgur porridge to eat." It was a childhood just defined by scarcity. But, out of that chaos came radical, incredible change. Inspired by Ataturk's vision for a secular, modern Turkey, she grabbed the new opportunities that were suddenly available to women. She went to university and chose a path that was, it was almost unheard of for a woman at the time: the study of ancient civilizations. And this pioneering spirit really defined her whole life's work, and it led her from the university lecture halls to the very heart of history itself. So after she graduated, she made this really pivotal choice. Instead of a purely academic life, she decided to work at the Istanbul Archaeological Museum. And why? Because, in her words, it allowed her to touch history with my hands. And the museum was sitting on a treasure trove, literally tens of thousands of unread Sumerian tablets. Now, the scale of this project was just immense. She wasn't working alone in a dusty room. She was collaborating with leading experts, like the famous Sumerologist Samuel Noah Kramer. Together, they painstakingly translated thousands of these tablets, piecing together the daily lives and beliefs of humanity's very first urban civilization. And what they found, it was just staggering. They were uncovering the first known love poems, the first legal codes, the first schools, the first lullabies, even the first fables. They weren't just reading history, they were basically reading the origin story of humanity. So just to be clear on what we're talking about, this is what a Sumerologist does. They're like historical detectives. They decipher this ancient wedge-shaped script called cuneiform to understand the society that gave us writing, the wheel, the big stuff. This was her entire world. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Because for Muazzez İlmiye Çığ, these ancient truths were never meant to just stay locked up in the past. And this is how her life's work exploded into a modern-day controversy. See, she didn't just publish her findings in academic journals. Nope. She wrote over 20 books for the general public, arguing that many stories from later religions actually had their roots in much older Sumerian myths. She wasn't just a historian. She was connecting the dots across millennia, dragging ancient history right into modern conversations. And this brings us right back to that trial. In one of her books, she presented research that suggested the practice of wearing a headscarf actually originated in the rituals of Sumerian priestesses, not necessarily as a symbol of modesty. Well, that claim led to her being charged with inciting religious hatred. Her defense was simple: "I'm not inciting anything, I'm just presenting my academic research." Her response in court became legendary for its beautiful simplicity. She said, "The truth is not judged, it is studied." It's just a perfect summary of her entire philosophy, that historical inquiry has to be free from persecution. In the end, she was acquitted pretty quickly. But that trial, it turned her into a national symbol, a symbol of courage, of academic freedom, and of the fierce defense of secularism in Turkey.
So, after all that courtroom drama, what do you do next?
Well, if you're Muazzez İlmiye Çığ, you just keep on working, you keep sharing, and you find new beautiful ways to connect the ancient world to our own.
Her long life gave her this really unique perspective, and she often shared her wisdom. It kind of boiled down to 4 powerful ideas. Always embrace life's surprises. Stay relentlessly active, both mind and body. Find wholeness within yourself, not in someone else. And just discard negativity. But maybe her most beautiful message didn't come in words of advice at all. It came in the form of a 4,000-year-old artifact that she brought back to life. At the age of 100, she was filmed singing a lullaby, but this wasn't just any old song. This was a lullaby translated from a Sumerian tablet that's nearly 4,000 years old. It's one of the very first lullabies we have any record of, and the video of her singing it just went viral. And for her, this was so deeply personal. It wasn't just an academic exercise. She said that singing that ancient song of comfort connected her directly back to her own difficult childhood during the war. It was this incredible bridge across time, connecting a mother from ancient Sumer to a child in the collapsing Ottoman Empire, and finally, to all of us. I think her true legacy is best captured in this one thought, a perfect summary of her life and her work. She said, "History begins in Sumer, but happiness begins in acting without fear." And that really leaves us with a final question to chew on. Muazzez İlmiye Çığ dedicated her whole life to uncovering just one lost history. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other histories have we forgotten that, if we could just rediscover them, might completely change how we see our world and maybe even ourselves?